Mr. President, Ray McGovern is here to brief you.
Yeah, I hope you got some answers here. Listen, some of this stuff that went on today in Israel really put us in a bind here. Kamala, she's told the convention, oh, yeah, don't worry, we're going to have a ceasefire, whatever the hell that means, or how long it'll be, or what it'll do, but at least we're supposed to be committed. We got some leverage here. We're paying for this whole war and everything else. And then Netanyahu says, no, there's not going to be a ceasefire if there's any that exit, that Philadelphia thing is that exit to Egypt, and they're going to do that. And this whole protest they had there, he just rides that out, and they're not going to get rid of him. He's he's the smiling Donald Trump. He's got a better smile. So I don't know what's going on here, Ray, but I said that we're going to do one final serious push for a ceasefire, right? And then somebody asked me, walking back, one of my aides that I do trust, he says something that, so what when they turn it down? Netanyahu's already turned it down. So what does that mean? What happened to Kamala's promise of getting a ceasefire? Did we just blame Hamas for that? Right? But it's Netanyahu who's stopping it. You think people are not stupid, and if we're worried about people whether they're going to vote in Michigan or something because they don't see it the same way, I mean, what's going on here? I mean, Netanyahu, what's he doing? He's putting Trump in, right? He's trying to undermine us.
Well, Mr. President, the people of Michigan aren't stupid, but the rest of the American public is brainwashed. You heard Kamala say that she'll do everything. She's unbending in support for Israel's right to defend itself. Now, whether that right to defend itself can include killing, well, at least 40,000, some people speculate as high as 200,000 Palestinians, not Hamas, but Palestinians, well, that's quite a stretch. The other thing that I would point out to you, Mr. President, and my colleague briefing Kamala is telling her the same thing, that she's been poorly briefed on the terrible rapes that those Hamas people did in invading Israel. There were no such. We've proven that. Even the New York Times has come off that. I don't know why Kamala will repeat things that are demonstrably untrue. I mean, you can kind of visualize the Hamas. They got a couple hours before the Israelis. Now, do guard duty here because I want to rape a couple of women. Give me a break. They didn't do it. The rapes have occurred on the other side, Mr. President. That's going to be found out. And as far as your
Yeah, but
question,
nobody cares about the. Let me cut to the chase, Ray. I don't want to go through the old song and dance of all this. The fact of the matter is, he cut us off at the knees. That Netanyahu, Bibi, he cut us off at the knees. So he says, no, you're not gonna. We're gonna pen him in a ceasefire. They're gonna be in a real concentration camp. That's the ceasefire, and they're not going to have any kind of exit or access to Egypt. Everybody, what the hell? How do you even know how this happened? Because this was Egypt. They were in there when we took over Gaza. When Israel took over Gaza, I shouldn't say we, but we supported it. So the whole damn thing is so confusing. I know maybe it's a good thing I'm not going to be president. I can't make. Maybe I know too much about the history, but here we're saying Gaza, right? They can't be connected with Egypt. Now we made peace with Egypt, and the only reason that Israel's got Gaza, right, is that Israel said they were being attacked by Egypt. They weren't attacked. There was a preemptive war. We supported it because
that's
they,
right.
like Kamala says, will do anything to make Israel feel safe. But the fact is that the war was not with Palestine. People keep every once in a while somebody asks me about that. The war was Egypt, and then over the West Bank was with Jordan, right? They were in there in Jordan, and these places were supposed to be brought together in that two-state solution that nobody wants to talk about, right? And then now we say we're going to have a ceasefire, but whoever runs Gaza, they're not going to be able to have contact with Egypt. They're not going to be able to go through. They're not going to be able, I guess, get aid, get anything from Egypt. So there's nobody's going to go for a ceasefire like that. And yet now, right away, after I talked to the press, he says, no, well, no, you can't open that up. So they're not going to go for it. And he quietly, Trump doesn't have to say a word about it. Just he's Netanyahu's doing his work for him, right? And so where's Kamala now? Kamala, is she not as reasonable as I am? Everybody thinks she's the softy here. She's somebody who put people in prison, including keeping them in there if they got the death penalty, and she don't care what color they are or anything. She's a tough cookie, and she's policed that border with California, tough on that. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to be made to look like the softy here, and Kamala is going to tell Trump, look, if this is what it takes to make Israel be safe, let's go for it, and then we'll support them all the way. But she's not going to, what I advise her, she's not going to say she's going to cut off arms, right? So she's take the tougher position maybe than Trump, and then she's going to hit him on the Ukraine, right? Because he's a Putin simp, right? So she's going to be a tough cookie, and she's going to win, which is fine with me. You got to stop Trump from trying to put me in jail once I'm not here. But what I'm saying is, this peace ceasefire thing, she's got to stop. I'm going to tell her she's got to stop talking about it because it's not going to happen. And we just got to go all the way with Israel, I think, because we can't cut off arms.
Well, Mr. President, a lot of people say you can cut off arms. We're talking about, I know the word is not very pleasant to you, but we are talking about a classic genocide. And the only thing that
Don't
would,
use that word, Ray. We
okay,
don't use that word. It's not, genocide. Genocide it happened once. And it's not going to ever happen again. Never again. Never again. It happened there in the Holocaust, and that's genocide. And it's not. Yeah, just don't bring that up. It drives me crazy. Some people on my staff say, "Well, genocide, the UN, the courts. Those courts don't mean deadly. We're the only court." By the way, wasn't it great the way I kicked ass with Maduro down there in Venezuela? We grabbed his plane. They can't fly anywhere, and that's something. Remember the Rockefellers? They used to own Venezuela. Remember they had all that oil and everything. They couldn't kick ass that way. Even when Rocky was vice president there, he couldn't do that. And then hey, we grabbed the guy's plane. We're America. And Kamala, let me tell you something. These peaceniks and everything, they think they got a good deal with her. They think I was a bad guy. Oh, you watch what she does. You just watch it.
well, Kamala is saying the same things you were saying, Mr. President. The trouble is that the Israelis are not only continuing to do what they do, uh, call it extermination, if you will, but now they're in the West Bank big time. Now, you may know that the
How did they
neo.
get in the West Bank, Ray? I thought this whole thing was Hamas and Gaza. They control Gaza, and that's why we get to kill everybody in Gaza because they voted for him or something for them. But how the hell did the Netanyahu pull this? He's a wily guy. How did he pull it off that he now gets to clean out the West Bank, get rid of all the Palestinians? That's really what he wants. You all know that, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
extermination. Yeah. Now, it
Well,
goes
it's not
back.
extermination if you get them to leave voluntarily.
Yeah, but
That's
they
the
have.
whole deal. It's like that Nakba thing they keep bringing up the first time when Israel was created. If you get them to leave and become refugees, there's pretty bad photos everywhere showing babies and everything and people taking their meager belongings. We don't like that kind of photograph, but that's not genocide. And genocide is when you go in there to shoot the terrorists. So that's why they got to shoot a lot of them, right? You got to shoot a lot of them because while they're there, they're the terrorists. Once they become refugees, then they get some sympathy. Am I making sense to you? I'm a little tired because I was out there with the press, and I mean, yeah, it's I don't know what's going on anymore.
Well, just
Well,
just
you know
to.
what, Ray? I've known you a long time. What, you're 27 years with the CIA. I've known you when I was a senator. I know you all the time and everything. You want to know something just between us, and I hope that damn kid doesn't have the recording going. I told him to cut it off. The White House said, "I'll tell you something. Ray, I'm ready to go. I mean, I don't you tell anybody, but I think in my book that I'm going to write, this is a terrible job. I mean, here I was, the best president America ever had, best economy we ever had, strongest respect in the world we ever had. They kicked my ass. Democratic Party shoves it to me. I still can't get over that. Yeah, go ahead, Ray. What?
Well, Mr. President, where to start here on the West Bank? I think it's really important. You probably should know that many of the neocons in previous administrations, perhaps in yours as well, would not refer to the occupied territories, would not even refer to the West Bank. They prefer to talk about Samaria and Judea, uh, Jewish land from biblical times. There's a great bias in your administration and in previous ones where people can't really see straight, can't see the truth. And it manifests itself right now in the fact that no one is up to speaking the truth except you. Now you say you're tired. Okay, well, you have you have the opportunity as a lame duck president to speak. You don't even have to compare notes with Tony Blinken or Jacob Sullivan or Kamala. You just tell Bibi, look, we're not going to support you if you enlarge the war or if you try to exterminate the Palestinians in the West Bank. You can do that, and guess what? He would have to listen to you. Do you know why? Because the Israeli army doesn't want to get involved in any more stuff. They've been defeated by Hamas down there in Gaza, at least fought to a standstill, and they don't want to get involved against Lebanon or any other place. So you have a natural ally in the Israeli army of
You know,
all
Ray, you
places,
keep saying stuff like that,
right?
and nobody sees it that way. I mean, look, I'm not in the mood to put you down. You know, you've been loyal, you've been great, I guess. You know, but you've been and you're smart, but you can't say the Israeli army they're going in there and shooting anybody they want and blow up houses and bulldoze, and you tell me that they don't that's what they're good at. They're better at than we are. You know, me lying. Everybody got on our case. They do all this stuff all the time. You know, I see. We got pictures all the time. I mean, we try to not get them. You know, get the media to carry them all the way. But you tell me the Israeli army, they looks like that's what they're good at. They just love bulldozing houses and shooting up people and everything. And Hamas. I mean, they keep killing Hamas. How many of there couldn't have been that many Hamas people, troops, right? The 40,000. They kill them all. Where do they keep coming from? I don't know what's going on.
Well, they haven't killed them all. That's the problem. Mr. President, what's different this time around is that Israel's possible enemies, Iran, uh, uh, the people in Syria and Iraq who can take pot shots at the hundreds of troops we have still in those countries, and Hezbollah in Lebanon are incredibly well equipped with rockets and missiles and other kinds of armaments of all shapes and kinds. Now, Iran has warned recently, actually just today, the foreign minister has said, look, be careful how far you go in the West Bank. There's a limit to our patience. Now, I don't think Iran is going to intervene directly, but they have all kinds of surrogates, the people in Iraq and in Syria. Hamas and Hezbollah, they're going to cause real problems for Israel. And the only way that it can be stopped is by somebody who has nothing to lose. That would be you, Mr. President. Somebody has nothing to lose by doing the right thing and saying, stop the violence, ceasefire, exchange the prisoners now.
It's
And
not
if you don't,
violence. It's not violence if Israel does it. Then I'm not going to pull the rug out from under Kamala. She said she's with Israel's right to defend itself all the way. And so it's not violence. If Israel's doing it, they're doing it to protect themselves, to prevent the Holocaust, to destroy these anti-Semites. What world do you live in, Ray? If I do that, you know what they'll say? Then they already think I'm crazy. If I condemn anything Israel does, are you kidding me? First of all, I'd destroy the Democratic Party because Trump, he's going to go wild. He probably wants to nuke them all, you know. And by the way, you keep bringing up Iran. We killed Israel killed that guy, the top Hamas guy or somebody there. They didn't do anything about it, And now they actually want to come again with us with the thing John Kerry favored, stop the nukes or something, and we can make some noise about that. Be nice to them there, but I don't know. I think you're reading it wrong, Ray. I do. I do. But anyway, I ain't going to be the guy. Look. How can I do it? Now you're not into politics. You're supposed to be an analyst and everything. I get that. I get that. But here, Kamala has said. She said it at the convention. She said it just now when the killing of this American captive. She said we will defend Israel's right to defend itself and protect itself all the way. Well, all the way. Now you can't turn around and say, "Hey, no, you can't. You might have shot up some children or something." Well, that happens in war. American, we can't go in there and say, no, make sure you aim right and you don't, no, it's going to happen. You know what? That fog of war, that when McNamara, I remember that. I was around when Vietnam and McNamara, he said, oh, yeah, there's 3.5 million Indo-Chinese have already been killed, he said, and more. He said, but, well, everybody said that's the fog of war. You know what happens, all right? It's a
Well,
good thing
Mr.
that it's a good thing the Germans. They used to have a lot of people in this country. I remember Ford and some of those people. They would back the Germans at first, but the Germans. I mean, at least they didn't try to make that claim. Because I mean, who was smart about this was Truman. Truman. Imagine that, I wouldn't have done that. Dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Eisenhower didn't want to do it. Truman did it. And he said, no, this is war. This is what you do. And we got this weapon. We paid a lot of money to get it. And I'm going to use it. Right? And he's remembered. He's remembered as a great hero. And, and you mentioned his name. And not just Democratic Party. Wow, Truman's great. And you want me to go out being the thought of the appeaser, the bum, what? I might as well have been George McGovern. Who, by the way, was a war hero. But when he came to politics, no, he was going to make peace. And then he got destroyed. Oh, remember George? He was a good senator, too.
Yeah, blessed are the peacemakers. Mr.
Yeah.
President, you're quite right. Kamala can't do this. But I'll just say one more time.
She
You
doesn't want to
can.
do it. She doesn't
You
want to do it.
can.
She's
Doesn't
a
matter.
shrewd. She's a tough
Okay.
cookie. She's a tough cookie. Let me tell you, I'm the sap. I'm the softy here, And remember with Iraq, there was some time, I wasn't going to go for it. What are you doing? No,
No, I
no,
don't remember that, Mr. President. You were for Iraq from the outset.
no. I
You
mean that
prevent
the first Iraq. I forget.
all
There
the.
wasn't a there was an
Oh,
Iraq that I didn't want to go for, and people told me I was some hopeless peacenik. No, I
the
forget. What was I doing? Well,
the
I'm getting out of
first.
Afghanistan. They're beating me up on getting out of Afghanistan. If there ever was a loser, yeah, that's Afghanistan. And I'm now right. Trump's beating me over the head. Going to get the Kamala. Look what the Democrats did. They cut on Afghan. What the hell you were supposed to do there? I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Ray. Brief me. That's what you're paid to do. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, all I can say, Mr. President, is that things will get worse there unless somebody tells Netanyahu to knock it off. Again, the Israeli army would like someone to come in and say, look, Americans' support for still more violence is not going to be guaranteed. And you could do that. And in my view, unless you're going to run again, or unless you're looking for a kind of different history, then you would become blessed like the peacemakers in the Bible. Let me turn to Nick.
What peacemaker has been blessed in who is president? Don't give me the Bible here. It's interesting, Ray. You had two generals, right?
Right,
War heroes, Eisenhower and George Washington.
right.
George Washington. They both warned us, warned us about the military-industrial complex. Washington, we didn't have one yet. We just had crazy, what he called, beware the impostures of pretended patriotism. That's what he said in his farewell address. Beware the impostures. We got pretended patriots all over the bloody place, want to get everybody killed except themselves or their own family, which I suffered, But no, so We had these guys. You know, the Bible can warn you, but when our two great generals, and even Grant, another great general, was very worried about all this going to war all the time, you know, and so forth. You know, so the generals, you know, I mean, Marshall, he was also pretty good on some of this stuff from that point of view. I can't defend that point of view, but it's amazing. Everybody says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." No, not even in our own government when they are president and they were generals. You know, you don't hear Eisenhower being praised by anybody, do you? You know,
Well, Mr. President, George Washington also said in his famous farewell address, beware of attachments, emotional attachments to other countries where your interests really don't coincide. The word he used was
pursue,
passionate.
pursue, pursue by peaceful and Gentile means engage the world. I read this, I read it over and over. I thought I would quote it, and my speechwriters cut it out every single time. You know, every single time he said, engage the world. He wasn't an isolationist. He said, engage the world, pursue common interests, but by peaceful means, not
Right,
military means. You know,
right.
hey,
And
what, who could get elected president in this country saying that what George Washington said? Give me a break, Ray. Give me a break.
well, you're not
Talking
running
too much.
again.
You're the briefer. Go ahead and brief, but
Pa-
take it. Take it. What are
the
we going to
words are the words I remember, Mr. President, a passionate attachment of one country to the interests of another, which don't necessarily coincide with your interests. He was talking about getting involved with countries like Israel that has interests that are far removed from our own, and Israel is a classic case of that. As far as Ike is concerned, the military-industrial complex is one of the main actors driving this passionate association, this passionate attachment to Israel. It's $5 billion a year almost that goes to Israel. That's a filthy lucre. So that's how I come at the passionate attachment and what Eisenhower said about the military-industrial complex. People don't realize that that's very much in play. Now, with respect to Ukraine, Putin is on his way to Mongolia as we speak. Uh, Ukrainians are saying, if you Mongolians don't arrest Putin, you're in for some consequences. So just file that one away. Putin is meeting with school children in Tuva and other Central Asian areas just to demonstrate how much she is concerned with the multinational population in his country. And he said today that, look, I didn't really expect this, but because of this invasion of Kursk, our forces in the real front out there in Donbass, they're going twice as fast as I ever expected of them. And you need to know that, Mr. President. The denouement is coming. Putin will be able, in just a couple of weeks, to go all the way to the Dnieper River. That's before the election. And threatening hitting targets inside Russia, that will just hasten the advance in the Donetsk and Lugansk and the Donbass country regions. And so you need to be aware that the end is in sight. And if there's no one, no adults that get up and say, look, okay, enough carnage is enough. We're not going to throw any more Ukrainian boys into a battle meant to actually weaken Russia. Then things are going to come to a no good end, as the Chinese used to say, right there before the election.
Well, you know, I was disappointed they shot down. They had their best pilot in that F-16, and I don't know whether it was an accident or what, but he went down. But we got a lot of these planes and new equipment and everything. The real issue here, Ray, is do I give the go ahead, the green light to go deep into Russia? Now
That's
you
correct.
know you know Ray what's holding me back. You know, and that's nuclear war because we go deep. You know, we go and we start hitting some of their strategic defenses what they think is necessary to prevent a nuclear attack. They got the same instructions that we have here to our people. You got to take them out, and you got to take them out with whatever you need to take them out, the enemy. And I'm not so old or so tired that that thought ever leaves my mind. I may not say it publicly, I may not you want to appear weak or anything, but there's a reason. You can only play the madman game so far. Yeah, well, bring it on, but but bringing it on is the end of everything. Everything. I know that. You know that.
Mr. President, it's refreshing to hear you say that because not many people believe that that's the case. Uh, there's all kinds of talk about you approving a stepped up nuclear armaments package designed to defend supposedly against Russia, China, and North Korea, and that your people are thinking about revising the nuclear doctrine, just as the Russians are speaking about revising theirs. So the most salutary thing that can happen is somebody come in and stop this darn war in Ukraine, so that no one will be tempted to use a nuclear weapon. Uh, as you've heard me say countless times, the Russians have the upper hand. They've all but won in Ukraine. They're not going to be tempted to use a nuclear weapon. However, even if you give them these standoff weapons that hit deep into Russian territory, do you remember the intercepted conversation between those Luftwaffe generals? They said it's not going to make any difference with respect to the trajectory of the war in Ukraine, but it'll just get the Russians more angry. So what I'm saying here is that as long as somebody makes it clear that this is what's happening and these are the realities, then your advisors, which a lot of people think are still a little bit, a little bit not so sophisticated and not so experienced, might suggest to you that you use a small nuclear weapon so the Ukraine war doesn't end before the election, and so that the Kamala has a reasonable chance to win. And as I've said before, if that other guy gets in, there are legitimate fears on the part of your associates that he will take it out on them, and he will have the power and the book on them to retaliate against what he perceived they did to him in just not too many years ago. So those are the stakes. And what I'm saying here is that the Russians are moving inexorably toward Kiev and toward the Dnieper River, which is kind of bisects Ukraine. And victory is in sight for them. So, how can you deal with that reality and prevent people from saying up the ante? There's no ante to up except nuclear weapons. Please don't listen to those
Ray,
that say that.
sometimes I think that I should have you arrested, because seriously, seriously, uh, you know, I mean, do you not read the New York Times, the Washington Post, any of these publications, Wall Street Journal? You read the Wall Street Journal, and it looks like the Russians are being destroyed. Forbes. I don't even know what Forbes is anymore. You got these magazines out there. I don't even know what they do. Newsweek came back somehow. They're there. You go on that. You ever go on that Apple News, Google News, see what
I
they? Because
do.
nobody picks up like a New York Times anymore. They're all getting it from Apple News. But Apple News, they run what these traditional papers say, right? When they like it, when they don't like it, they can. I don't know who makes the decision. I don't know how it works anymore. But it's not the old days. Like you read the New York Times. You read Apple News, and their quote. They got the New York Times there, or they got the
Right.
Wall Street Journal. Well, you read Apple News and you read Google News. And one of my assistants, a young one that you got there, he pointed out to me, the guy, what the hell is his name? Max there. And he pointed out to me, you read those things, you get a different view by far than anything you ever tell me.
That's right,
You ever
Mr.
tell me.
President.
You
Yeah.
ever tell me. So what? Either you're some Putin simp or something, or what the hell's going on here? Because why is the according to what, because I don't see the New York Times anymore, but that Apple News, okay, or Google News, we're doing well. We're doing well. The world respects us. We're doing well. I don't see where your gloom and doom. It's kind of undermining America. It's
Well,
dangerous.
Mr.
You
President,
watch out. With that in England now, they arrest people for saying stuff like that. They got the guts to do that in France, they had an election, right? Macron, he was defeated or something, right? But he's in charge. He doesn't. He don't care. He's not going to change anything. That's the new tough democracy,
yeah.
tough love, tough democracy. You don't let a guy like Trump get in because he's some kind of nutcase. We know how to do it, and nobody calls us nutcases. We're
Well,
sound sensible. We're sensible.
Mr.
Except you
President,
get too old, then they say you're senile. I don't know.
Mr. President,
I
speaking of
think I'm smarter
nutcases,
than I ever was. I don't know. Senile.
speaking of
Yeah.
nutcases, you'll remember Trump's PR person Kelly Ann Conway when she was confronted with some truths. She's well, there are alternative facts. Alternative facts. Well, what you read through Apple and through the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and all the rest of it are facts that are alternative to reality. Now, you remember me telling you that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You remember me telling you that the Russians did not hack into the DNC. Sworn testimony shows that I was right now. And you remember me telling you that Afghanistan was a fool's errand. You're just sacrificing people and our soldiers. You remember that. Now, whose alternative facts are you going to believe? The ones that I adduced for you, based on what I learned from my colleagues, or the ones that you read in the New York Times? I submit that the New York Times used to be the all the news that's fit to print. Now it's all the news that fits we print. And what fits the narrative that Ukraine is losing, that we're going to prevail in the Middle East, and that we're even stronger than China. It's all what the British call bollocks, which is a kind of a crude way of saying BS.
But Ray, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not too old that I can't enjoy. Okay, I'll even use that word. Or not enjoy, but I could find it interesting. I've been hearing all about alternative. I remember we used to have an alternative media. They were on the left, the Peaceniks or something. Then
Hmm.
some of them were on the right, Buckley or whatever their name. But we had a mainstream media, and you could talk about, truth. They had it. They own truth. But truth is whatever is believed in any moment of time. Now, I'll give you a little political philosophy. I've got from all those years in the Senate. There's no independent thing called truth. You could be pushing a bill that hurts people, and the same people that is hurting are going to come lobby you to pass it because they've been convinced the truth is it's a great bill, right? We see that all the time, all the time. Right now, all this thing, keep the Chinese cars, the EVs, keep them out of the United States, keep them out of Europe. The real reason you want to keep them out is because they cost half of what General Motors, actually a third maybe of what General Motors
Of
would
course.
charge. And General Motors is pulling back. They can't even make a decent EV, for as far as I could see, that Bolt was pretty good, but I don't even know if they make them anymore. I think I cut a few ribbons or something about it. So, but if people believe having a cheap EV from China, which is, the only way we're going to meet those climate standards and everything, like the solar panels, we kept putting them down. No, now we're sinking their solar panels. They make 80% of the solar panels in the world, but they can't make money off it now because we gave them a bad rap. And that's what we're doing with the EVs and everything. So, I don't know why I'm making light of this. It's depressing. But the fact is, what you call truth or alternative, it's all what is believed. What is
Well,
believed? That
yeah.
all is that matters. It's sad, but it's true, Ray. It's sad. You give me these briefings. That you probably got it better than most other people. You work at it. You know the language, that Russian and everything. I got people here brief me. They don't know diddly. But the fact of the matter is, That's not the truth that matters. The truth that matters is the truth that's believed. And you can fool all of the people all the time. Hate to get old Abe get his panties in a knot, but goddamn that you can fool them. Yeah,
Well,
look, I fooled them about me being senile. I'm not senile. You could tell that.
Mr. President, it has to do with what is truth. Remember, you come out of the Senate, and there was a Roman Senate too. And when Shakespeare wrote that play about Julius Caesar, the big question came: Quod est veritas? What is truth? Okay, because truth was a relative thing. If they wanted to take Jesus off and kill him, it didn't matter whether it was true or not. What they were referring to, what they were charging him with. So what I'm saying is that the unique thing that I enjoyed in Washington when I came down during President Kennedy's administration was the inscription on the wall right in the foyer of the CIA headquarters, just newly built in those days. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, from John's Gospel. Okay? Now, we were unique in the fact that we could tell the truth because we responded just to the president, not the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense. We could tell him like it really was. The reason Truman set us up was to tell him the untreated intelligence. Now I enjoyed doing that, and we were able to do that up until things became a little corrupted under Bill Casey and Bobby Gates. But most of my career was able to do that. So there is such a thing as objective truth, and it's not to be found in mainstream media. And it doesn't matter. Well, it matters greatly if people believe that. Here's an example, and I'll be very very quick here. The charge that the Russians hacked into the Democratic National Committee to steal those emails that were so prejudicial to Hillary Clinton, and most people think had a role in defeating her in the election of 2016. It was completely untrue, and there's sworn congressional testimony on that fact, dated December 5, 2017. Why do no people know that in the United States? It was suppressed for 2.5 years by Adam Schiff, head of that House Intelligence Committee. And then since 2020, since May 2020, when it was released with 18,000 other documents, okay, it's been suppressed by the mainstream media. So when you say Russian hacking of the DNC, everybody knows, in quotes, that they did it. Why is that important? Because people are going to be urging you and Kamala to face the Russians in Ukraine in uncertain, well, in circumstances that you're not going to win, but they're going to get enough American support for it because they've been told that Putin is the devil incarnate, or at least Hitler, okay? And they've been told that the Russians are confronting us and we have to confront them back. That's danger. You have 4 months left to change that. There is such a thing as truth. What I'm telling you is the truth. And it's the truth that you have the power to rein in Netanyahu. And again, I would just say that you ought not to let your lame duck status prevent you from doing that. As a matter of fact, it should enable you to do that, since you're not running again and you have just your retirement to look forward to.
What did Jack Kennedy say when the CIA tricked him into the Bay of Pigs, and all the Cubans were going to rise up and get rid of Castro? And
He
he
said he
said,
wanted to splinter it in 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the four winds.
"Yeah,
But that was because the analysis people in the CIA had not been consulted about the prospects for a Bay of Pigs
okay."
invasion. Arthur
I'm not,
Schlesinger, Arthur Schlesinger looked at that and looked into that at JFK's request.
didn't you guys have him locked up in some shed or something? He couldn't even get out and call me. I thought there was part of that Bay of Pigs that Schlesinger was temporarily out of control, out of contact. I
It could have
can't.
been, because when he looked into it, he found out that the whole thing was
Yeah, I
planned,
remember
and
that.
Kennedy
But,
was
but,
told that
but
there
Ray,
were.
Ray, we're all both here on the slippery end out now. We're not. There's no future. But I want to say, uh, it's interesting what you're saying about the relation of truth and all that. It's interesting. And there were a lot of people in the government that told us the truth, they did. And they get wiped out or they get intimidated. I know that. I had people on my staff, I mean, come on, I've been dealing with intelligence and everything. The problem is, telling the truth doesn't get you anywhere. I know. I mean, really. I mean, like, look. Do you think I felt good? Yeah, keeping Julian Assange, that guy in jail and thing. I did in a way. I mean, he embarrassed the Democratic Party and everything, but I knew that he wasn't. He was a wise ass. He's telling things he learns, and people tell him he gets off on, being a troublemaker, whatever the hell that was. But I knew that was that what he was saying was embarrassing, but accurate. But you can't you can, everybody talks about you got to honor the office, but nobody ever tells you what that really means. You know that means whatever the office did in the past or is going to do in the future is the right thing, no matter what the facts show. That's what
Well,
honoring this office is all about. Okay, and you're kidding yourself if you think, you know I mean, come on, you can make anybody look like a bum, and when they want the wars of drums of war to beat, then they're going to beat, and remember they used to think Roosevelt was a pinko because he wouldn't take us to war, and then, oh yeah, now he's a great war hero, or the same thing, right?
well, more recently, Mr. President, if you think back to 2002 when the war drums were beating for an unnecessary war against Iraq, I would just ask you to reflect on your role as chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. You played an integral role, some people say the most important role, in greasing the skids for a war of aggression. How do you feel about that? Now you have a chance to prevent further war in the Far East. You're not running again. I would just suggest that it's a matter of conscience. Think back to 2002 when you wouldn't let people who knew which end was up, like Scott Ritter, testify before your committee because Tony Blinken would have let him in the door. Think about that, how you feel about that in retrospect, and whether you might translate that experience into doing something quite different now with respect to Israel and with respect to Ukraine.
All right, Ray, you went too far. I'm not gonna fire your ass out of here right away. I mean, I know you're basically a good guy, uh, but you don't know. Look, this is the greatest country that ever existed. All right, you probably don't even know that now, or don't. Well, I don't know. You must have believed you were in the army, right? You volunteered. You weren't one of them draft dodgers, right? And you spent your whole life in the national security. For what? First the army, then the CIA for 27 years. Okay,
Right.
this is the great. Well, Ray, you're going to hear me out, or I'm going to have you arrested. Okay, you're going to hear me out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you could put down this thing or that thing. I mean, what I did, I thought I was making America stronger. I thought I was doing the right thing. Okay. Maybe you can go back and nitpick it. Maybe Iraq was the wrong war. But I did there believe, because some people I trusted told me there were weapons of mass destruction. And then when there weren't, well, we had egg on our face. What am I going to do? Embarrass this country in the eyes of the whole world and said, we lied to you? I'm not going to do that, because we are the greatest country in the world. And I'm going to end this. I'm going to end this with a lesson you should have learned in all your years in service. Once you accept that we are the greatest country in the world, once you accept, right, that we are the only serious defender of liberty and freedom and democracy, that we are the only ones that will be there at the end of the day preserving freedom, democracy, honesty, truth, right? That's America. Okay? You may have to do things that coded on the edge. You may have to not reveal everything. You may have to shade it a little bit, because you can't let this country go downhill. You can't let people attack this country. And I don't care if you're Donald Trump or you're Joe Biden, but you got what comes with this office and with leadership, right? Is yes, necessary deceit, if you want to put it that way, to keep up the idea that we know what we're doing, even when we're not sure we know what we're doing. Now, that may not make sense to you, but you've never held political office, you know. But keeping up a certain illusion of American greatness, which I happen to believe is true, and I believe it's always true, and if you don't believe it's always true, no matter what we do, then you don't deserve to sit in this office where I'm sitting for another 5 months. All right? So that's my lesson to you on citizenship and leadership. But I'm out of respect for your long years of service to this country. I'm not going to report this conversation to anybody, but we can't get into that kind of doubting the greatness of this country and that it's always been great. That's the only reason Trump is such a menace, because he thinks that we're not great now. Hillary was right. We always been great, and don't bring up the slavery thing and all that. I'm tired of hearing it. All right, Ray. Yeah, but don't worry. I'm not calling the cops on you. You know. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.